Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic, and good morning, Asgard. Welcome to episode 18 of the Good Morning Asgard podcast, and this morning will be the first of the Good Morning Asgard podcast of this year to be available on all platforms. So, completely live over on YouTube. It has up to this point been reserved for members only because I've been trying to have it be an Odyssey exclusive, and thank you to everyone who has been watching the stream on Odyssey. But I think at this point, after about a month of it being an Odyssey exclusive, I think anyone who was willing and wanting to move to the Odyssey platform has done so already, and so I feel like it is best to open it up to everyone. Today we'll be talking a little bit about the Tomorrow War, but as is typical of the Good Morning Asgard podcast, it is also open to other movie, TV, pop culture talk. We try and leave anything as far as it being politicky or anything like that. We save that for Thursday's stream, which is on the OMB Report channel, as that is a lot more proper for that channel to be news and regular culture events. But this morning, for those who have not ever watched live the Good Morning Asgard podcast, we talk about movies and such, and I've been getting quite a bit of flack recently for my opinions on the movie The Tomorrow War. And obviously, I know that, especially when it comes to my other brethren on YouTube, people who I am very closely associated with, people who I will absolutely always stand up for, I seem to be alone in my opinion of the film, which is that yes, there are fun moments to be had in the movie, but the story is not good. At an objective level, the story is not good. And it comes down to the fact that the choice to have an incredibly convoluted time travel story, of which it didn't have to be that convoluted, they decide throughout the realm and throughout the process of the story to add in a bunch of random things that just make the story more convoluted and more nonsensical. Anyway, I'll go into more detail about why the story of this movie bothers me as much as it does. And here is the biggest problem, and here is the biggest thing with all of it, is that there are so many people who I've heard using the logic, hey, but it's not woke. Hey, at least it's not woke. Yeah, the story's not good, but you know what? I just turn my brain off and enjoy it. And this is coming a lot from the same people who have been saying, what, do they expect us to turn our brains off and not see the woke identity politics? So it kind of just bothers me that so many people who have used the logic of, oh no, we can't ignore these things because these are problems and because we want to call them out and because we just want to escape into movies, are using almost the same exact logic that a lot of SJW people use when trying to defend woke identity politics being put into their movies. They say, oh, well, just turn your brain off and just mindlessly enjoy it. Now, again, I do understand that there is a bit of a difference there because, one, they're trying to, again, shove narrative and shove politics into storytelling. But I think that what we should, as consumers, call for and support are not just stories that aren't woke, but stories that are good and not woke. And again, there are a lot of really awesome things. There are a lot of really awesome parts that exist in this film. And I mentioned them in my review, in my mini review that I did for YouTube Shorts, and I still plan on doing like a fuller review for the channel at some point. But basically, I think the creature design is fantastic. I think the CGI for the creatures is fantastic. But there's also a lot of other CGI in the movie that is not very good. In fact, anything with flames in the film just is not a very good thing. But anyway, I did see someone was commenting earlier asking a question, Jedi Knight. I do not know. I have no idea what happened to get you banned. That is not my decision. I have no influence over that, so I'm not the person to ask. I typically try not to play Messenger, so I would say try and reach out to someone who was on the actual show and see if you can find out a little bit more. If there were any mods that were there in the chat, maybe reach out to them as well. because I don't know. Also, someone did put out false information. I am still very much a part of the Geeks and Gamers team. I do videos periodically for Park Hoppin', and I hope to be able to bring back my box office breakdown videos to the main Geeks and Gamers channel. So I am still very much a part of the Geeks and Gamers team. I just haven't been able to really provide them a lot of content because my timing has been rather limited ever since Baby Thor was born. And also, I would gladly join them on their gaming streams. However, as I've constantly brought up to Jeremy and as I've constantly brought up to everyone, and I like to kind of troll them a bit on this, they start those streams way too late. Part of me kind of wants them to be like, hey, why don't you, or wants me to tell them, why don't y'all create a poll and see how many people would rather the streams be a little bit earlier? Because something tells me that a lot of people would probably say, oh yeah, I'd be totally down for an earlier, Mario Kart stream. Because when you're starting it at 10 p.m. Eastern at night, I know that a lot of the people who support Geeks and Gamers have to be working men and women who are like, I got to go to bed. I got to go to bed. I got woke in the morning. Like, I just don't understand it. But anyway, it's like I'm both serious and not serious at the same time, because it's funny, because if I were to ever get them to move one stream up, it would be like the one day I couldn't make it, and then the whole thing would just kind of, blow back in my face. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and say hello to some people. So since we are now publicly live on YouTube, let's say hello to some people there. Peter Han, what's going on? Good morning to you. He gives the film a 7 out of 10. And I think that, again, if you subjectively enjoy the movie, good. You can subjectively enjoy anything. I subjectively love the film The Room, but it's an objectively trash film. Now, The Tomorrow War is not a trash film. It's just not a very good film. And the reason why I say that objectively is because the story has a lot of major flaws to them. Callum Cannon and Jedi Knight, I've seen that y'all have been here. Gary Banjo Sandwich Worthington, hello to you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I wouldn't say that, though, Gary. I don't think. I think the reason why I think it seems that way, Gary, is because you have so many people coming to bat for this movie for two reasons. One, because they love Chris Pratt, which makes a lot of sense. I think Chris Pratt's a pretty likable guy. But a lot of that liking of him is the fact that he is not a typical liberal Hollywood elite, which, again, that is a subjective understanding, right? That means that your subjective opinion is influencing how you are viewing an actor, which means it's a lot harder for you when you look at a person in that way to be constructively critical of that person. Typically. Again, it's not the universal rule, but typically, if there's someone where there's this subjective bias that you have towards them because they fill some need that you have, it's a lot harder to be critical of them. And I even admit that bias myself when it comes to certain films, when it comes to certain genres, that I'm like, hey, I have a bias here. I say this all the time, especially when it comes to the Thor films, for instance, right? I have a bias towards the Thor mythology. I have a bias towards the characters that are established, which is why when it comes to bad films objectively, like Thor the Dark World, an objectively bad movie, I still subjectively enjoy it. But I admit and understand that it's because I have that bias towards those characters. I also like Thor Ragnarok, even though an objective standard would say that this character doesn't really fit into the comic book world. I've learned a lot about the issues of Thor Ragnarok from people like Gary at Nerdrotic, for instance. But I still subjectively enjoy it, even though I can admit those objective flaws. So when it comes to this film, again, number one, people are defending it, I think, because they like Chris Pratt, which, again, I think a lot of people are getting blind to the flaws of the film because of Chris Pratt. And two, because Hollywood and the Hollywood media are going after this film and going after Chris Pratt. And a lot of people are saying that the reason why they're going after the film is because of Chris Pratt's politics, or because they just don't like Chris Pratt, or because they don't like the fact that it's a white male doing it. And you might find that in some reviews. You might actually find that in some reviews. The issue, though, is that when you start to go after those things, and you start to prop up a story and prop up a film that objectively on its own cannot stand, because, as I said, the story has objective problems, especially when you realize that what is the main crux of the story? Time travel. And it's a mess. And then the film goes 30 minutes too long, and in that 30 minutes, they add in so many random caveats to time travel that makes no sense. And just the entire last 30 minutes, I was like, okay, this is just stupid. This is just stupid. Not to mention some of the worst visual effects in the film are there too. So the issue that comes with that, though, is that now every time a critic is critical of the movie and it talks about, even if they're just focusing on the time travel aspect of the story, people are going to assume that that person, rightly or wrongly, is only hating the movie because they don't like Chris Pratt or because they don't like the politics of Chris Pratt. But that's not necessarily true. Again, I'm someone where I like Chris Pratt. I like him a lot. And that might have actually influenced my view of his performance in the film. However, I cannot look past a bad story that is bad on an objective level. Anyway, again, I get kind of heated about this stuff, and I don't want to. I don't try to. It's just something that bothers me so much. It really does. But anyway, your Muslim uncle, welcome. Thank you for being a member on the channel. I appreciate you being here. It's 2 p.m. where Callum is. Well, thank you very much for joining me. And one of the cool things about these morning streams is that for people, especially halfway across the world, it is a much better time overall for them. Let's say hello to my Odyssey fam. What's going on, Odyssey fam? Light up that fire button if you would, please. It does mean a lot. Bifford the Hobbit says, happy 4th of July. Well, thank you very much. Hope everyone had a wonderful 4th of July yesterday. I was able to grill up some burgers, and we had some mashed potatoes on the side. Some garlic mashed potatoes. It was delightful. It was delicious. We kind of cheated a bit on the potatoes. We had it where it was the microwave ready ones, but you know what? It was just, mwah. It was beautiful. It was I forget the company name, but it was one that was, I think, sponsored by or does sponsor USO. So I was like, hey, I'm okay with that. Laura, it's a short story. What's going on, Laura? Saying, I need more coffee. Indeed. Trent Johnson says, good morning. Good morning, you, Trent Johnson. And then he goes on to say, I think people think it's good because people try to attack Chris Pratt since he doesn't bend the knee. And again, I think, Trent Johnson, that is exactly the point I was making, is that I think people are watching this film and thinking of this film through rose-tinted glasses because it's getting attacked, or it's seemingly getting attacked. And I think that some people are rightly calling out critics who, if they had all mentioned Chris Pratt's politics, or if they had all mentioned the fact that he's a white male, I think that those critics are morons, and I think those critics should be ignored and should be mocked. But if what we're talking about here is a critic who's critical of the film, and then we, because of our mindset, assume that they're only disliking the film because it's Chris Pratt and because of his politics or his lack of politics, I think that is a step too far. I think some people might be reading into that just a bit, because here's someone who likes Chris Pratt, who likes the fact that Chris Pratt is not a typical Hollywood liberal, and I still don't like the story and think the story is problematic. And anytime a critic's going to bring that up, I'm going to say they're right. They are totally right on that point. There is an objective flaw in this story, a major one that I just can't, again, objectively just cannot be ignored because it just doesn't work. GMonkey76, what's going on? Welcome. Bifford Howitt said, I tried to look for the box office report on your channel and other YouTube channels, but I cannot find a recent one. I did not do one for this past weekend. I'm going to try and get that video done today. Obviously, with it being 4th of July yesterday, I was not able to get a video done. But anyway, be on the lookout. It might be up today or at the very latest tomorrow, which might actually be for the best because we might actually get some updated box office numbers and have the best numbers available for that. And really, there's not a whole lot to say because Fast and Furious 9 is still doing well. It crossed $100 million. So Fast and Furious 9, the fastest film in the pandemic time to cross $100 million domestically, so here in the North American market. But other than that, there really aren't a whole lot of major players in the box office at that point. I guess I'll also look ahead to what the projections are for Black Widow because they've actually gone up. So I've seen a lot of videos saying, oh man, Black Widow's projections are down. They're actually going up. The actual numbers themselves are going up. I don't know if they're going to reach that level because I still believe that because of especially reviews from people like Jeremy Johns, who has a huge outreach, right? His videos watched by hundreds of thousands of people, and I think it's going to have a major impact on that as spoilers about the film come out, as of course it is available on Disney+. I don't think people are necessarily going to buy it, but because it is available on a digital platform, what that does mean is it does mean that you're going to find a lot of high-quality pirated versions of it, and I think that's obviously going to have a major impact on Black Widow's bottom line. So I don't know how. I'm not going to put a number out there because, again, I like to work with actual numbers we have available. So I'll be able to make better use of that once we actually have numbers this coming weekend. But, yeah, there is no recent one for the channel. So that's the one that you're looking for. Mr. Roy, what's going on? ZK Man, what is going on? Glad to have you here. Trent Johnson says, having a baby and work takes away from your personal time. Who knew? Exactly, Trent Johnson. Who Who would have known? Baby Thor does start daycare this week, so with that, I should have a lot more free time to be able to potentially have some changes. I don't have any official plans to change any of the times that I have available right now, but it means that I can go for a bit longer on the streams. I don't have to cut it off right at an hour, and obviously I don't have to worry about constantly looking at the baby monitor, having to worry about that. Luckily, Freya is off today, and so she's taking care of him right now, and then I'll take over after I finish the stream. Let's see. Laura says, I don't think I have ever seen J.K. Simmons in an action role. Hopefully this movie will open some new roles for him. Yeah, J.K. Simmons was fantastic in this film. What film is J.K. Simmons not fantastic in? I don't really know. As far as his performances goes, he doesn't give a bad performance in anything he does. If the movie he's in is not that great, he still does a great job. And yeah, I think it'd be really cool. He was looking pretty jacked. And I did like that dynamic between him and Chris Pratt. I did like that father-son dynamic. Doesn't save the crux of the story for me, though. And then it says, I'm sure the Wokies hate this movie because it shows the military in a positive light. Laura, here's the thing, though. I don't think it does. Or at the very least, it doesn't show politicians, the government, in a positive light. And that's where I think some people might take the way it presents the government in this film as kind of a negative view of military, because I think this film is very much anti-war. There's a lot of anti-war messaging in this film because you have this universal draft that happens. You see the nonsense that happens from that. Obviously, there's protests that happen in the film because of that draft. And the whole time I was like, dear Lord, man, this is terrifying stuff. And it reminds me why I myself am very much anti-war, though I am obviously pro-military. So yeah, I think it definitely has those aspects of being pro-military in the way in which it presents soldiers. I think it presents soldiers very much in a positive light, but the government, it does not. And so in that way, there's almost this anti-war message, which sometimes from some people, they can sometimes, I think, extend that out also to politicians, or rather also to the military as well. But yeah, it is interesting how there is actually very much an anti-war message in the film. Trent Johnson says, I know this can be a blind spot for me as well when it comes to playing some of the video games because I like them because of nostalgia. Yeah, exactly, Trent Johnson. And that's why for me, when I go back and watch films that I grew up with in the 90s, like I look at them and I still like them, but I do still have to admit that there are probably going to be some biases that have an impact. And then Laura says, I agree, Tomorrow War is a C- movie, but I round up to a full letter grade because Chris Pratt is awesome. And again, there it is right there. And Laura, I think that you kind of get into why when I was starting off with my reviews, why I had like the subjective versus the objective, because there is a difference, right? I think objectively this film is not very good because the story is just not good. But I think that subjectively there's a lot of enjoyable things in here for sure. Now, for me, as someone who cares a lot about story, it's hard for me to subjectively enjoy any film if the story is so bad and is so broken on its face that I can't get past it. So I think that that's the reason why, for me, I'm not able to get past those things, and also why I'm not able to subjectively enjoy it for that very reason. But anyway, shout out to my Odyssey fam. Thank y'all for being here. Let's head back over to the YouTube chat, where it is 8:58 in the chat, 9:17 in real life. So a bit behind there, but hey, I expected that since I have fallen a bit behind with it being now public. Stainless Steel, what is going on? Welcome to the channel. Again, if you have a comment or question, please put @Odin at the very beginning, and I will gladly read any comments there. Do not have a limitation on that as far as making people donate or anything like that. Just @Odin at the very beginning of your comment lets me know that you have a comment or question that you want read aloud. Callum says, Odin, thank you. Schnorapubus, who is a member, also, if you are a member on the channel, obviously, you get your comments read automatically unless I see you're tagging somebody else. Snorbubus Cuber says, hello, humans and other quitters. What's going on? Hound 3000 also in the chat. Peter Hahn also here in the chat. Thank you very much for being here. Blake St. Clair also in the chat. Welcome, welcome, welcome. People saying I put the hammer down. Fred Blogs, welcome to the channel. Appreciate it. Hadrian built a wall. I appreciate that. I get that. And it could be, however, I also care about good films, so I think that's a pretty big part of it too, is that I just like really good films. Let us see. Jedi Knight says, I'm 5 hours ahead too, so it's even worse for me. Oh wow. Yeah. That's true. JKD Buck 76, what is going on? Glad to see you here. Ursula Tron, what's going on? Let's see. JKD Buck says, I'm debating whether or not to watch this movie. And here's the thing. I'm not going to tell you not to watch it. That's the other thing too. You know, there's a lot of other people who might, you know, from different sides of anything would say, oh, don't watch this film, don't support this movie. I would say if this film still sounds entertaining to you and you don't care about bad storytelling featuring really bad time travel logic, then you might enjoy it. If that stuff doesn't matter to you or matter as much to you, then you might enjoy it. If you really like Chris Pratt, you might be able to look past that. There's a reason why I've been trying to find the film Passengers. It's not because I think the movie's going to be good. It's because, hey, I like Chris Pratt. But even though I like Chris Pratt, for me, it does not make up for any of the story. Andrew Hoyle, who's a member, what's up, says, looks like I'll be watching over here as it's completely dead on Odyssey. Well, there's some life over there. There's some life over there. I was just, again, talking and reading some comments over there as such. See, Gary Banjo Sandwich says, the late streams work on a Friday like FNT. Yeah, exactly, Gary. I think that, going back to my comment about late gaming streams, yeah, I think that on a Friday night, it works pretty great. I think maybe even on a Saturday night, it could work well. But even then, I think that people still typically would get up early, you know? But yeah, the late weeknight streams, for me, it's just like, hey, I would love to actually play, because I do have some of the games that are played. But I can't, because it's just a little too late. It's a little too late for me. It's a little bit too late, I think. Lando Calrissian, what's going on, Lando? Glad to see you here. Gary says, I was joking about Future Classic. It was average. Just a future joke. You'll get it later. Okay, Gary. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, context is always very difficult to convey over text. So when I read that, because I think there are people that probably believe that, honestly. They think that it is one of the best things since sliced bread. And it's just not. Again, it's not a garbage tier film. It's not garbage tier at all. And when I gave it the grade of a C-, a C is average. So for me, it's just slightly below average. You know, kind of like Jeremy. But I think that in the end, it is a film that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy. But also, I think that there's going to be a lot of people like me who are in this position where you're seeing videos being posted nonstop, left and right, attacking critics for being critical of the movie when there are completely legitimate reasons to be critical of the movie. And again, if you're going after a critic because they're bringing up Chris Pratt or they're bringing up identity politics or anything like that, okay, that's one thing to go after. But I think to go after anyone critical of the movie, or at least to kind of blanket statement that, you know, this film is just great and it's great because it's not woke and because Chris Pratt is not political, those are not objective standards of filmmaking. Those are not objective standards to say whether a film is good or not. Anyway. I saw this. He didn't tag me, but I saw this. Like, you're very critical and cynical. Hey, that's catchy. You should use that as a moniker. Yeah, as positive as I have been on so many films that I've been watching recently, yeah, it's interesting how whenever I'm critical of something, I get the hate. I get the hate. JKD Buck, what is going on? Yes, indeed. It is observed today. This is correct. Completely correct. Renee, what is going on? Glad to see you here. Here's the issue with that. 65% drop-off is actually not terrible. Here's the thing. It's not the percentage that you look at. It's how much did it make in that opening weekend, and then you look at the percentage. And it made $70 million in the opening weekend domestically, which for pandemic times is incredible. So a 65% drop, putting the film, because you also have to include all the money it's made over the week too, it's over $120 million domestically in 2 weeks. And this obviously you have to include with the foreign numbers, which, as I've mentioned in previous videos, is actually not that great because 200 million or so of the total money it's made has been in China. And that is bad for more reasons. Also bad because they only get about 25% of that. So it is definitely not the position where it is a financial success or a financially I don't even think it's at the point where it's financially broken even at this point. I haven't done my updated box office numbers for it yet, but we have to understand that that movie is still very young in its infancy, is still going to be released in other countries, and so it could still potentially be a massive hit. It could still make its money back, despite making most of its money in China. But yeah, 65% drop by itself is not bad. It's definitely on the higher end, for sure, but it still made like $30 million in its second weekend. And seeing that a lot of movies in their first weekend could barely ever hope to make $30 million, that's why you have to look at that opening weekend and not just the 65% drop. Because what is it dropping from? Because at the same time, it would be like saying, if you have $200 million opening weekend and then a 65% drop, that's still a lot of money you're making. So yeah, the percentage drop is not what you look at first. Anyway. Rogue Jedi, what is going on? Thank you for being here again. Please type at Odin at the very beginning of your comment if you have a comment or question. Peter Hahn says Dunkirk is greater than Tomorrow War. I would say objectively Dunkirk is better. I think objectively speaking. But I would say subjectively, I actually probably enjoy Tomorrow War. Even though I had issues with the story, I would rather watch Tomorrow War again than Dunkirk, because at the very least, and again, this is where my bias comes in, at the very least, the Tomorrow War does have J.K. Simmons, who I love, and Chris Pratt, who I really like too. Dunkirk doesn't really have that, because most of the characters in their film have no character. Because that's one of the main issues with Dunkirk is that there are really no well-developed characters in that story. So, live at the Love Shack. Welcome to the channel. Let's see, JKD Buck here says, Odin, if Odyssey worked a bit better, I'd be over there. Odyssey is good, but not great, and good is the enemy of great. Nevertheless, thank you for streaming today. This is YouTube's greatest channel. Well, JKD Buck, thank you very much for that, man. I appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, I've been streaming exclusively over there for this morning show for a while because I wanted to be able to try and show it some love and support. But it's been a month that I've been over there, and there's been almost no major updates. So I feel like anyone who was going to go over there has gone over there. And at this point, it's like, if you're not going to innovate over a month's time, I know that they're a smaller channel. They don't have as many people. I mean, I can only be exclusive over there for as long, for a certain period of time. Anyway, let's see what's going on. Speaking over on Odyssey, Laura says, I think the government fighting a hopeless war and the soldiers willing to fight on despite having no hope of winning was realistic. Yeah, I definitely think that there is a point there. I did actually like the classroom scene where they, the students were like, what hope do we have? If all things are inevitably going to be lost. Again, there's good things to be had in this film, but there's a lot more things, I would say, in the story that just don't work well. Alex M. Brown, welcome. Trent Johnson tagged says, someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. Me? Are you talking about me? Because it's definitely not me. Laura says, one reviewer compared the action scenes to a Michael Bay movie. The flying creatures versus helicopter scene was fantastic, gory. Yo, yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, I think anything with fire and explosions, yes. I would say that those were on par with Michael Bay, and yet not on par because I think Michael Bay actually does give better visual effects. Like, despite the fact that I don't like Michael Bay movies because they're not very good stories, I think fire and explosions and visual effects in general, I mean, look to the Transformers films. Those films are terrible, but the visual effects have always been pretty impressive for those movies, despite the terrible movies and the terrible stories. But yeah, I would say that there are some scenes where I would say that might be on par with, but there are some scenes that I think are worse than even Michael Bay action, to be perfectly honest. But there's also scenes that are better. Again, I think the creature design and the CGI for the creature design was actually pretty fantastic. So anyway, Odyssey fam, thank y'all for being here. Light up that fire button. Let me head back now over to the YouTube fam as well. Mike Jackson, what is going on, good sir? Glad to have you here. Andrew Hoyle, who's a member, says, my comment about it being dead on Odyssey was meant about the actual stream. Buffering like mad and freezing. Plus, none of the comments you read out are visible to me. The only comments I see are mine. Interesting. Okay, that's weird. And again, that's the reason why I'm streaming publicly on YouTube today as well, because we've had random issues like that. Forever Sci-Fi as a member says, I was entertained, but I go into all time travel movies knowing they'll be a mess. It was not a great story, but it felt way too similar to Caviezel's Outlander, especially in monster design. And I've been hearing that a lot. Oh, but that's all time travel movies. But there are several time travel movies where I've not been the entire time breaking down how the logic works. Like, here's the thing. And someone made this comment too, saying it's not real. Time travel doesn't actually exist. Okay, that is true. But in the film, it does. And if the film is going to present time travel in a way that makes no sense to the point where it's clearly obvious that it doesn't make sense, that's a problem. Like, you go back and watch films like Back to the Future. If you overanalyze that movie, you can find flaws. But it doesn't spend crazy amounts of time about how things work. And when it does, it follows the rules that it establishes. Whereas with this film, it feels like it added things on, trying to make it more compelling, trying to make it more complex and deep. But in the end, all it did was just make things nonsensical. One great example. Why in the hell is his daughter spending time in the future while all hell is breaking loose instead of doing the research in the past where it's safe? Not having to worry about that. Could have saved a lot of lives and could have saved a lot of time. And again, why do they do it? Because it's a dramatic moment. Literally the only reason why they're doing that at that time. And if you say, oh, it's because the technology is more advanced, okay, guess what? You can bring things back. You can bring back the toxin through the time gate and a lot of other things through the time gate. No reason why you can't bring the technology back. Oh, also, why is it that they don't just bring a lot of their smartest and bravest and best soldiers back into the past and just do some research there? Oh, because then that would cut down on your runtime and because that would just make a little bit too much sense. Oh, okay. Oh, also too, so you're going to establish that his daughter is in the future and is the main doctor, and you're going to establish that you're only sending people back in time who are going to die soon, because otherwise, otherwise it would impact the timeline. Even though if you're sending thousands and thousands of people to die, even if they're going to die soon and before the war, that's thousands and thousands of little insects that you are stepping on that are going to have an impact. And you're going to change the outcome to the point where people should start evaporating, people should start ceasing to exist because you are literally killing people or sending people back, and the vast majority of them are dying. So again, there are these major plot contrivances and major plot issues that as I'm watching them, I'm like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't work. Wait, why don't they just go back? Why don't they just do this? Why don't you just do that? But the bigger issue too, with the father-daughter meeting in the future, by the fact that they are meeting in the future and the fact that she tells him what happens to him, which is that he leaves their family, just him knowing that would and should have an impact on who and where she is. But again, contrivance. So much more I could say too. Anyway, Gary says, the film was not the worst film out in the first half of 2021. The pushback of some films may make critics give bad reviews due to being frustrated. And again, it's definitely not the worst film out there. It's just not a good or great one from an objective standard. And Tax Shark says, the state of the film is so low at this point that enjoyable popcorn films are too often seen as masterpieces. No problem just stating the fact, but enjoying the popcorn. And again, it's fine if you subjectively enjoy this or any other film, but do not say it's a good movie. You can say, I enjoyed it, I had fun with it, but to say it's a good movie, that's an objective statement. And it's just objectively false. And then also to try and defend the objective issues with the film with subjective viewpoints, again, that's where the issue really comes in for me. All right, let's see. JKD Buck 76 says, what was the major plot hole in Tomorrow War? If you don't want to spoil it, that's okay too. So I kind of just brought up a bunch of the problems with that film just now. But yeah, again, the whole, oh, I need you for something. I need you to bring this back. It's like, okay, you could literally just bring everything back and work on it there. Save yourself a whole lot of trouble. Anyway. Orange Chat Reviews, hello, says, what's up, how are you? I'm doing fine, Orange Chat. I'm doing fine. Blake St. Clair says, I like Chris. Hey, I like Chris too. I think he's fine. Blake Sinclair says, I like Chris Pratt as an actor, but the movies he chooses have been, for the most part, generic and bland. Do you put the actor's film choices into consideration for talent? Is picking a skill? I mean, it really depends, because there are some really talented actors who have done some really bad movies. I would say, yeah, I think you're totally on there about Chris Pratt. I like Chris Pratt. Obviously, I think that his best role in a film to date has been his work in Guardians of the Galaxy. But yeah, you look to his other work, and it is pretty bland and generic. I mean, he's a very fun guy, and so I think that definitely comes through in a lot of his storytelling, and I think that comes through in a lot of the films that he does. But yeah, I think that's totally something that one could look into and someone could use as a standard. Because as I mentioned, you look to the other films that he's doing, and it's films like Jurassic World, which have not been good. You look to Passengers, which again I heard very mixed things about. But yeah, I mean, he's still a very likable person, right? He's still a very likable guy. Pre-hindsight, what is going on? Glad to have you here. Jerry Glaze in the chat. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's see. JKDBuck76 says, ask any kid who the next Indiana Jones should be, and they'll say Chris Pratt. Probably. And again, that's why my issue is not with Chris Pratt. My issue is with the story, which is broken and nonsensical and just bad. All right, heading over to Odyssey. Laura says, the best use of a cruise ship in a disaster movie since Speed 2. That was a pretty awesome moment. I will definitely say that for sure. Definitely will say that for sure. Let's see. Trent Johnson says, I will admit I'm worried that this platform may go the way of Storyfire, where they have a lot of momentum at first, but it eventually stops and not enough people support it anymore. I don't think that will be the case, Trent Johnson, simply because YouTube is in the process of actively deleting and purging channels. And there are some pretty big channels with big subscriber counts that are moving to Odyssey exclusive. There are a lot of people who've been utilizing Odyssey live streaming, massive channels that have been doing that. So I think that because of that, Odyssey is actually in a much better position to be able to maintain itself and to be able to provide for a lot of people in that way. The issue with Odyssey at this point is it's not really innovating fast enough. I mean, just the other day, they announced as a big announcement that they've added playlist, which on the surface seems like a really cool thing, but it's also something that's pretty basic. Like for me, I would rather them work on their live streaming platform. Because yeah, it's great that they're hosting videos and it works very well. I would say the thing that they should focus on most, if they really want to start enticing people to come to their platform, I think the live streaming is where they should keep their focus, most especially the chat. I think adding things which to me seem like they would be simple. I'm no engineer, so I wouldn't know for sure. But to me, it seems like it'd be simple to add in a process by which when you're typing in the chat box, if you put the @ symbol, you should be able to auto-populate names. I feel like that's something that is standard on a lot of various streaming platforms. And yet that's something that doesn't exist. Having a dedicated actual chat section that can work universally and can be embedded and can, therefore lead to different people being able to create even third-party extensions on browsers. For instance, what I'm able to do for YouTube, for instance, to highlight comments in this way, it's not possible with the current way their chat is set up over there. So I think the reason why and the issue that I have with Odyssey is that they're really not, they're not progressing fast enough. And also, I think they're focusing on areas that are not nearly as important as others. I don't think they're prioritizing things very well. So again, I'm still very much a fan of Odyssey. I still plan to stream Odyssey. But then also, as people have been saying, they're like, I've been having so many issues with Odyssey. And I have it where the encoder is set to work the same exact way. Now, apparently, I've been having internet issues, though, because today I'm seeing the same issue where there are some drop frames, but only 69 drop frames. And going now for, 40 minutes? That's nothing. So it really should not be buffering a whole lot for anyone on YouTube's end at the very least. But I have a separate encoder for Odyssey, and it's set exactly the way they want it. Maybe I need to change it to what the standard is for other places, but I think that's something they should focus on too. All right, let's see. A couple more comments over on Odyssey, and then I'll switch back to YouTube. So ZK Man says, hit the nail with my main problem with the effects on on the timeline with sending people to the future who end up dying before would have had they not been sent. Exactly. That is, I think, one of the biggest issues is that, again, it seems clever on the surface. Oh, they're sending people ahead, and the standard is that they had to have died before the war. But the issue is that they were friends with people. They may have had family as well. And them dying or them being sent to a war and having PTSD is going to have an impact on people around them. Like that's just standard butterfly effect logic there. And the fact that they're doing it to thousands and thousands of people, not just a few, but thousands and thousands, to say it's having no impact on future events is ridiculous, is ludicrous. That's a pretty straightforward problem there. That's a pretty straightforward problem. And again, I guess one could say, oh, it's baked into the cake. It was already going to be an issue because of the logic that's being used. But I think that they could have come up with another way to have it make a little bit more sense and to be able to, at the very least, to establish that in that universe, there's different timelines. But they don't do that. Again, it's about saving our future, which means they're talking about an integrated singular timeline, and that is, I think, the biggest flaw with this film. You go to films like Back to the Future, and for them, how do they handle these different changes? Oh, they said there's a timeline, and then there's this alternate tangent that's now been broken off. They could have had a statement about that, saying, hey, and Chris Pratt kind of does indicate a little bit, saying, I want to save your world, I want to save your future, but even then, you're thinking to yourself, why would we send thousands of people to the future to events that have not happened yet when instead, as I mentioned before, you could send people back to the past, or you could send at least technology or information back that could then have an impact on that future war and make them more ready for it. Also, it's interesting how one of the big cruxes of the story is they need to get the female because the female does not get affected by this gas that they have, but they never use the gas. They almost never use it. So this gas apparently exists, and one could argue, well, they're limited in resources. They can literally go back in time to where, again, that's what they do for the female poison. They send it back to get it manufactured. So we already know they can do it, based on the logic of the story. So why is it that they're not just mass producing that and then just sending it to the future and then they can literally wipe out? You know how they're always getting attacked by hundreds and hundreds of these things? Why don't they have gas fields of this poison that, remember, literally melts them? Because the males are the problem. There's only one female. Again, another major plot issue and contrivance. There is no reason for them to send anyone into the future if all they need is this gas. Because if all is left is the female, guess what? No issue. And again, they wouldn't even have to do that because if they made it clear that, oh, we need to fix the issue in the past before these events happen, it means, guess what? The human population does not have to worry about being extinct because if they already have the gas that kills the males, guess what? Females not really all that powerful anymore. Makes it a lot easier for them with more people and more resources to be able to capture the female and limit the amount of damage that she can do. But again, if you really, really dive into it, this story is, oh man, infuriating. Anyway, Laura over on Odyssey says, I started watching Babylon 5. It's an older series with dated special effects, but still holds up because of the story and the acting. And again, I think story is one of the most important things. Story is one of the most important things in any movie. It's very hard to have a good movie on an objective level than to have a... It's very important to have an objectively good story than it is almost anything else, I would say. I mean, you look to, for instance, a movie like Clerks. Objectively, Clerks, if you look at it from a filmmaking perspective, isn't very high quality, isn't very good. But the story and the character development is so great and funny, it's a classic. You can have very low production value movies, but if they have good stories, those can elevate the films past all that other stuff. But you need to have a good story. Story can also be the downfall of huge box office blockbusters, for instance. All right, we got a couple of super chats. What's going on, Matsuine? Thank you very much for the 2 super chats there. It says, very derivative movie. Borrowed themes from Starship Troopers, Edge of Tomorrow, Attack the Block. Entertaining enough for a weekend distraction, though. And again, Matsuine, I think that is spot on, right? I think that you could absolutely say that, again, objectively, it is derivative. It is nonsensical. There are better films. Starship Troopers is a better movie. Edge of Tomorrow, better movie. Attack of the Block, I would even say, is also a better film too. But yeah, I think there are some entertainment values there for the story. And then he donated again. Thank you very much for the other $5 super chat. It says, and borrowed from Aliens as well. Cargo spaceship full, dormant, voracious, relentless, deadly, biological killing critters that humans disturb. Yeah, exactly right. And yeah, and here's the other thing too, right? The war, they get the poison for the female, which also would kill the males theoretically too, back. And so the future is lost because the connection is broken. And so you have people, and so anyone saying, oh, well, they couldn't send people back into the past because that could mess things up. Okay, well, then there's several people from the future who are stuck in the past. And so how do you explain that? And they don't really ever establish any other familiar relationships, by the way, except for Chris Pratt's character, which again, the fact that he would have met his future daughter would impact him, which would mean that she would either not exist or would be very different by the fact of their meeting. So anyway, yeah, lots of issues there. But anyway, I agree that was the other issue too, is that you're an hour 45 or so, or an hour to 40 minutes into the movie when he comes back with that poison to mass produce. And then they add an extra 30 minutes of story on because now they're going to go try and find the ship in the first place. And it's just like, and that was the other problem too. Oh, you want to talk about bad story elements? Okay, so they figure out somehow this one guy has one of the nails of the alien. It looks pretty clean and polished, and yet they're able to find debris underneath the nail somehow. And they show, oh, this is from ash from a volcano. And in order for them to be able to triangulate where this creature may have originated from, because again, these are creatures that would have swarmed all over the world, which would mean that you could theoretically have had these creatures come across several volcanic ashes. Oh, my goodness. Instead, what they decide to do, even if you can explain that, oh, how are we going to figure out what volcano could have caused this kind of eruption? We need an expert on volcanoes. Where will we find one of those? Let's go back now to Chris Pratt's high school, to the kid who at the very beginning of the film made one random comment or one random line in the film was about, oh, this kid is obsessed with volcanoes. Oh, and he's able to explain to all these adults what volcano and where to find it. And somehow they're able to triangulate a location. Again, 30 minutes that did not really need to be added on. And, oh man, that was another major issue. Oh yeah, let's the high school kid. He's an expert. Instead of going to one of the thousands and thousands of trained PhDs that are now involved because the entire world knows about this future event, instead of getting one of them involved, let's get the kid who's going to use Google Maps or something similar to Google Maps to triangulate the location of where this volcano was. Like, come on. How can you defend that? That's not overthinking it, by the way. That is something that's just stupid. And to be honest, let's be honest here. If Chris Pratt wasn't in the movie, if instead this was some generic actor or even a Hollywood leftist, would you be as defensive of the movie? Answer that honestly. If this film starred Pedro Pascal, had the same story, had everything else be the same, but Pedro Pascal was the lead and not Chris Pratt. And let's say that did lead to many critics giving this film a positive rating because of identity politics and because they like the individual politics of the person. Would that have an impact on your view of the movie? I think it would. Again, that comes from people saying, the first thing people say, Chris Pratt's awesome though. Oh, I love Chris Pratt. I got to defend Chris Pratt. And again, subjectively, okay, fine. Objectively, no. I'm sorry. Can't do it. Can't do it. Oh, man. All right. Anyway, Orange Hat Reviews says, I like Chris Pratt in Wanted. Got knocked out by a keyboard. I didn't even know he was in Wanted. Matt Tween, thank you very much again for those super chats, man. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Actually, these are the original Solo dice before Solo lost money. And Matt Tween, thank you for that second one, too. All right, let us see any other people who are members or who are tagging. JM Cruz says, Odin finally got to catch up on a live. Just finished rewatching The Expendables 2 and also watched Tomorrow War earlier today. There's a lot of loopholes, but still enjoyable. Needs to be rewatched. Again, I think there are some good stuff in there. I think there's good things in there for sure. But the story is not one of them. Thank you, Matt Tween. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. I don't think wokeness is really in the film at all. I think there is diversity, but the diversity in the film feels very natural, and the actors that they have in those roles work very well. Not to mention, this is a more original story, and so it's not really as forced. You know, what we see typically in Hollywood is they like to take pre-established stories and then do race swaps, gender swaps, things like that. The beauty of this film is that because it's a much more original story, is that they're not able to have to worry about that as much in their choices. So, yeah, I didn't really catch any real wokeness in the film, but I think the issue that I have is I think some people are saying, it's not woke, therefore it must be good. Therefore, I must defend this film until my last dying breath. And it's like, no, don't do that. Oh, man. Ben Lunch, welcome to the channel. Thank you for being here. Daniel Billings, welcome to the channel as well. By the way, I just realized I definitely did not update my social media put out. So a bunch of people probably got sent a link to an old stream, and I'll fix that at some point. Let's see. JKD Buck comes in and says, Odin, I love you, man. You just saved me 2 hours. I won't watch it. Hey, again, you might subjectively enjoy it, though, JKD Buck. You might subjectively enjoy it. So I will not tell you not to watch the movie. I'm just going to explain why I don't like it. Yes, exactly. Thank God for Volcano Boy. Yeah, thank God that there's this one random high school student who's an expert on volcanoes. God. Again, if Chris Pratt was not in the role, and instead there was some other maybe woke identity politics actor in that role, I guarantee a lot of people would not be defending this movie. They would be saying, Volcano Boy, they would be making it into a meme. But people feel like they have to defend this movie simply because it's not woke and because they like Chris Pratt. And why they like Chris Pratt? Because Chris Pratt, as people have said, doesn't bend the knee. And again, I have no problem with anyone liking Chris Pratt. I like Chris Pratt too, for those very same reasons, but I'm not going to make excuses for a bad story. Exactly. Volcano Boy. Oh, my goodness gracious. All right, Forever Sci-Fi as a member says, I watched it, I was amused, but I have no desire to watch it again. Also, I'm pretty sure if they told the Russians about it, they would have vaporized that ship in 5 seconds. No UN, no mess. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like, oh yeah, let's send 5 people to this ship, even though the world and world governments know. Now, obviously, I think there is an argument to be made there because if you have world governments involved, you have a lot of governments like maybe Russia or China that would want to maybe weaponize that and find it first and do studies and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's just a lot of issues. A lot of issues. Yeah, Volcano Boy and Lava Girl, exactly. You're pretty much like 5 seconds away from that story. Just another red shirt. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. Paul Anchondo, welcome to the chat. Patriot Pal in the chat. Hello to you. Keck44, what is going on? Let's see. Thank you for being here. Just another red shirt is here as well. Thank you again for being here. Again, if you have a comment or question, please put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment. It helps me be able to sift through various comments. All right, let's see. Brightburn 1985 says, do you like Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow better? Oh, yeah, absolutely. For sure. Because Edge of Tomorrow has, in my opinion, I think Edge of Tomorrow has an objectively better story. because it establishes a world, it plays within the rules of that world, and in order to pick that movie apart, you would have to do a real deep dive into it. There's not a surface level issue. And I think that's kind of the difference, is that people keep saying, well, that's the issue with all time travel films. That's not true, though, because there are some time travel films that have a surface level problem, whereas there's others that have a more deep-seated one, right? There's one where you can watch the movie once and say, ooh, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't work. And there's others where you watch it and you're like, oh, cool, okay. They established rules. They follow those rules, even though, if I really think about it, I'm sure I might find flaws. With this one, you don't really have to think much about it to see the major flaws. Oh, Matsuine, yeah, the male aliens flying out the planet. JKDBuck76 says, if you all want a horrible movie with two great actors, watch Netflix's The Ice Road. It was awful. Odin could use it as a masterclass on how not to make a movie. Yeah, JKDBuck, I got your email about that, man. I can't believe y'all watched that with the whole family, too. All right, let's see. Callum, what's going on, says, if it was exactly the same story and dialogue, then by rating would go from a 5 out of 10 to a 4 because I like the actor better. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Your original grade makes a lot more sense to me, man. A 5 out of 10, that makes a lot more sense to me. And yeah, I think that the actor would have a major impact for sure. Lethal Lightning, what's going on, brother? Congratulations on your latest milestone. Let's see. Lethal Lightning says, that was the defense for Mortal Kombat. It's not woke, so it's good. No, it was straight trash. Worst movie of the year so far. Dude, Lethal, thank you. Yes. Mortal Kombat was not good either. And I got a lot of people who went after me when I pointed out that the film was not a financial success. And actually, someone claimed to be like an employee of one of the companies involved and was like, oh, the film's doing better than what you think, and you know nothing, and we haven't released in Japan yet, and once we do, we're going to make a lot of... And the film still, to this day, is sitting around the same amount of money as like $80 million or so it made worldwide. And even though it didn't cost as much, which was very clear if you watch the film, yeah, to me, Lethal Lightning, I think, Lethal, that the beginning and the end fight scenes between Scorpion and Sub-Zero were pretty fun. But I wanted to see a movie taking place in old era Japan. I wanted that movie. The very beginning, I wanted that to be the movie. The issue also is that it's called Mortal Kombat. Just Mortal Kombat. And Mortal Kombat doesn't happen in the movie. I'm not even a big gamer. And even I'm like, wait a minute. You didn't call this Mortal Kombat like the prequel, or you didn't call this something else to indicate that this was going to be a setup for the actual Mortal Kombat tournament. You just called it Mortal Kombat. And then you invented a new character instead of using the rich history of other characters that you have. You invented a new character played by someone who was bland as hell. And yes, Kano was hilarious and fantastic, but that doesn't save the movie. No, Lethal, I totally agree with you. I would say the same ideas and lines of defense for that movie are being used for this one too. I just think that a lot more people are defending this movie than they are or were defending Mortal Kombat. See, Gary says, so if they killed the queen when caged, then only males left, so Gasworks film over. Boom, Gary Banjo Sandwich, thank you, yes. Now, I think they kind of established in the film that she is tougher to defeat than the others. But also, too, yeah, their whole logic is that they're trying to do research, right? They're trying to do research to find out how to kill the queen in the past so that the war never happens. And again, that whole logic too. Why do we care about doing anything in the future when we could just spend our time in the past trying to present, or rather trying to prevent that future, right? I think it would have been more interesting if they were sending people back consistently back and forth about like what impacts they were having. Right? What impacts they were having on those future events. Because also, too, by the very fact that they showed up in the past, that by itself would have an impact on the future that they're going back to. But every time they go back, the future remains the exact same. Nothing actually changes. Again, that's a part of the broken logic of the film. Exactly. JKD-Buck76. High school volcanoologist for the win. Exactly. Again, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. I really do. Oh, man. All right, heading back over to Odyssey. Thank y'all again, Odyssey fan, for being here today. Let's see. Caro Don says, one awesome feature I like about Odyssey is that you can publish anything. Articles, audio, photos, videos, documents, etc. But yes, live streaming has room for improvement. And actually, Caro, I actually didn't even realize that you could upload those other things. I hadn't even tried uploading just audio, because I guess it could be used as a podcast hosting platform. I'd have to check that out. Trent Johnson says, sounds like this movie should have been 90 to 95 minutes tops. Yeah, I think one thing that could have helped this movie from itself, from its writers, would have been a shorter runtime. I think that would have forced them to be a lot more specific with their decisions and a lot more restrained with their decisions. And I think it would have made an actually a lot more entertaining, compelling story. But yeah, it's 2 hours and like 15 minutes. And the film technically ends an hour and 45 in. And then they decide to add extra 30 minutes of story, which just, again, leads to things making less sense than even before. Let's see. Laura says, the wife just got home from the ER with all her July 4th firework fail stories. Oh, no. I hope everyone was okay. Yeah, I mean, oh, man. People are so dumb on 4th of July. And I feel bad because I got my sweet little angel sleeping next to me. River, she hates fireworks. She gets terrified. She starts shaking and everything, screeching like a banshee. And it got so bad, we tried to kennel her up as early as we could and try to, we have a sound machine on, try to make it as good as possible. She broke out of her kennel. Now, the kennels are kind of, in a way, made so that they're not like the most secure, but if they're not trying to break out, which they're kennel trained so they don't, it's not ever an issue. But she's obviously like, no, I'm getting out of here. And so when my wife went down the first time to try and, spend some time with her, console her and everything, she was already out. Like, she was just running around because she was able to break out, which is why my other dog, Willow, was actually barking at her. So, yeah, poor baby, but yeah, it happens in that way. All right. Let us see, because I want to make sure I remember who all of my members are. All right. Cool. Just making sure. Let's say you are a member. Cool. All right. Justin, the red shirt, who's a member on the channel, says Plan 9 from Outer Space wasn't woke, but won and deserved a Golden Turkey Award for worst movie of all time. Exactly. There are plenty of films that are not woke and have fun, good actors in them, but they're still not good. Let's see. JDK Buck says, why not ride on one of the Eagles and drop the One Ring into the volcano? Speaking of volcanoes, oh, trust me, that is definitely something that is always brought up. But then and that's something that you typically bring up only if you've seen the movies. Whereas if you've actually seen or read the books or know a little bit about the lore of the books, you know that one of the key features of the Eagles is that they don't want to get involved. They don't like getting involved. And it takes a lot for them to get involved in any of those stories. And so it makes a little bit more sense when you realize it from that position, because if they had gone to the Eagles at first with the One Ring, they would have been like, no, we're not doing it. All right, let's see. Your Muslim Uncle says, Mortal Kombat was way too meh for something done after good video game movies have been done. Yeah, when the old school 90s campy Mortal Kombat movie is an objectively better film than one made in 2020 and 2021, it's like, oh, that's not good. It's not a good sign. Let's see. Lethal says, T1 and T2 follow their time travel rules well, except Terminators could bring back future weapons by putting the parts in their bodies. Yeah. And I think that's another great example, right? There's time travel elements in that movie too, but again, it does have an impact on their future, right? And I think that's one thing, even though I think the later films are not as good, in those later films, they do address that, saying because this machine went back in time and changed events, it altered the history. It altered the future. So at least they actually, established that. JKD Buck says, the ice road, I guess Liam Neeson needs money or just wanted to drive a semi. I suspect he knew it was going to be an ice turd. Well, Liam Neeson is kind of notorious for that. Liam Neeson has done so many B-level films, every year. He did actually one that wasn't too bad this year called The Marksman. Again, not a great film from an objective standpoint. It's fine, but yeah, he does that every year, it seems. Justin of the Red Shirt, as a member, says Mortal Kombat was more entertaining than Ape versus Lizard. Oh wow, dang! I actually haven't watched Ape versus Lizard yet. Now, yeah, because there is an actual Ape versus Lizard spin-off, which is hilarious, supposedly. But are you saying like Godzilla versus Kong? Because I would agree with you there. I liked Mortal Kombat more so than Godzilla vs. Kong, but I also didn't like either of those movies. So, Alex McCarthy, what's going on, brother? Says, good morning, Odin. How's it going? Alex McCarthy, doing fine, man. Thank you very much for being here. Let's see. JM Cruz says, I got a ton of heat from our community when I had a long-form podcast and said that Mortal Kombat was a bait-and-switch film and really misleading. Majority of the actors aren't good either. Yeah, absolutely. And it comes down to it, and the reason why I'm very publicly talking about this, and I'm not calling anyone out or trying to call anybody out. I'm just very frustrated that so many people are defending this film, and they're defending it simply because they like Chris Pratt and they like the fact that he is not someone that bends the knee in Hollywood, and also because they want to be able to attack critics who are attacking the movie, and some of them are attacking it because of Chris Pratt and his politics. And it's like, that doesn't make the movie good. We can be critical of those critics. I have no problem calling them out, but saying that anyone critical of the movie or insinuating that the critics are hating on the film only because of or primarily because of Chris Pratt, I don't think that's genuine. I don't think that's true, because there are objective flaws and issues with the film. Let's see. Patriot Pal says, this would have been a better movie if Hollywood didn't have a happy ending epidemic. Like if they set up a time loop. A lot of filmmakers are scared of giving us endings other than happy ones. Yeah, I agree. One thing we could say for this film is that it does have an ending. It doesn't really open it up or leave open the chance of there being sequels. So I guess that's one positive we can say about the film, but in the end, it's just, yeah, it's got some issues. Forever Sci-Fi says they could simply added a line about the female producing children immune to the toxin every time they used it because she survived. They didn't, though. Yeah. And again, I think that is something that they could have made a comment about, but they didn't. Again, these are clear issues in plot that they could have fixed with just a line or two, but they didn't. And instead, what they decided to do was try to make things more complicated to make it seem like they're smart and that this is a very complex and well thought out sci-fi film, but it's not. It's just not. In the grand scheme of things, 20, 30 years from now, this is going to be a very forgettable movie. Like, this is going to be a movie that barely anyone talks about. And I just don't like the fact that people are propping this movie up because they either like Chris Pratt or because they're not liking the attacks on Chris Pratt for this film, and therefore defending this film even though the film is just not good. Let's see. Brightburn 1985 says, I just feel like I wasted my time with Cruella because it runs on for too long. It just is a setup for a sequel we'll probably never get. Why would you even think it would be anything else other than that? That's why I only watched half of Cruella through EFAP, because at least I got some awesome commentary as the film was going on. That movie is bad. Because there were people too saying, hey, Cruella, at least it's, it's not that bad. And I'm like, what movie were you watching? There's some like cringe level moments in that movie that are just not good. Yeah. So I wouldn't have watched it had it not been for EFAP, though. Callum Cannon says, much of the defense for this is that a popcorn flick and it doesn't have much to make much sense. It has to make some sense, though. Callum, thank you. Yes, absolutely. People are like saying, oh, it's a popcorn film. Sit back and enjoy. And here's the point I was making earlier about that, right? People will bring that up and say it's just a popcorn film. And yet, how many popcorn films have been called out by the same people because of wokeness? And I'm not saying that there's not wokeness in those movies that have been called out, but the same logic could be used. Hey, why not just sit back and enjoy it? It's a popcorn film. Why do you care about the story? It's a popcorn film. Why do you care about this? It's a popcorn film. You see the issue with that logic? Just because it's a popcorn film doesn't fix it. With that logic, you would have to say, hey, Terminator Dark Fate, why do you care about the story? Why do you care about the identity politics? It's just a popcorn film. Just sit back and turn your brain off. You see the issue there? You see how inconsistent that is? It's not a good defense. And again, if you enjoy the film, okay, no problem. I have no problem with anyone who enjoyed this movie. I really don't. My issue comes in when anyone tries to make an objective statement or standard about this movie that is just not true. That just does not exist. Let's see. If Ever Sci-Fi says, the last part of the story felt like a sequel that they realized at the last moment they wouldn't get to do. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the film was released on Amazon. It did not get a theatrical release. And this is a movie where there's enough money put into it, clearly from the visual effects, that it would usually be a movie that they would put out into theaters. So, and they put it out for free too. They didn't put it behind a paywall except for Amazon Prime. And I think that does also say a bit about what they thought of the movie. It's clear that they didn't think that this was meant to be a great film either. Now, I'm not saying that movies that get put out for free on these streaming platforms can't be good, but what I am saying is that I do think that's just another level that you can add on to this. Pat S. says, did she seen a Terminator? What? 8-Bit Axel, thank you very much for becoming a member at the Citizen of Asgardian level. Howdy, howdy. See, Pat S. says, in the new Amazon Lord of the Rings, the Eagles are gay, like super gay. That's why they went extinct. Oh, man. Yeah, I didn't watch any of the panel that happened this past weekend that was going into how actually secretly J.R.R. Tolkien is apparently a raging leftist and an identity politics guy, which I didn't even realize existed prior to the 1960s, because guess what? It didn't really. And also, I didn't realize that a very devout pre-Vatican II Catholic would have had those positions. But apparently, people in 2021 think they know better. Man Squatch, what's going on? Says, has it been brought up that technology didn't seem to advance at all in 30 years? That's a great point, too. It's another good point. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're still using standard guns 30 years later. And it's clear that they established that the guns don't have an impact. You would think that after fighting the war, they would say, let's go back in the past since we can do that now. Let's try and develop weapons that can actually hurt these people or hurt these monsters. Because if you still even then want to maintain we need to go back to our future and win our future war, even though it's not going to have any impact on the past. Because if you win the war in the future, it doesn't mean that you're going to, again, it's stupid. But at the very least, they could be like, hey, let's go back in time with the knowledge and technology we have. Maybe since the males are so plentiful and since we have, again, going back to this point, since we have this gas that kills all of the male creatures, makes them literally like boil from the inside, which they don't use. Literally, we could mass produce that, bring that to the future, kill a bunch of them, and then at that point, you could trap one, bring it back, and guess what you can do? You can test it. You can be like, what weapons can actually pierce their armored-plated skin? That would be a better use of the time in the film. But instead, they... Again, the more surface level there's issues, the more you dive into it and the more you think about it, you're like, God, this story is not good. JKD Buck says, the Eagles don't get involved because they answer to Manwë, and he's too good to get involved. That's why Eru Ilúvatar brought Gandalf back to life. Just my 2 cents. Yeah, no. And again, when I made the comment, I also want to make clear that I am not an expert on the novels. My dad had read the Lord of the Rings series to us when I was a kid, and obviously I have read The Hobbit myself, and even those stories, though, I am not an expert on. However, I knew from those experiences that the Eagles typically were not a species that would get involved in different wars and conflicts, the conflicts of men, essentially, that they wouldn't get involved into. But yeah, that adds even more context to it, which is why, again, from a movie standpoint, I think that's actually a fair point. I think that's a fair criticism of the film for not including that information in the movie, because otherwise you sit there and say, why didn't they just bring it and drop it into the volcano? Again, I think it's a fair point outside of the books. Pat S. here in the chat. Andrew Hoyle says here, Liam Neeson is the Irish Nicolas Cage. I think that's a great point. Alex McCarthy here coming in. JKD Buck. He says, I liked Ice Road. Of course you did, Alex. You like bad movies. You've established this. Just Another Red Shirt comes in and says, I meant Godzilla vs. Kong, both bad, but I was more entertained by Mortal Kombat. Yeah, okay. I figured that's what you were talking about, but I just wanted to make sure. And yeah, I would agree. Because at least Mortal Kombat has Kano, which is funny. What does Godzilla vs. Kong have? Oh, that's right. They have the podcaster guy. Remember the podcaster guy? And then Andrew Hoyle comes in to say, or is Nicolas Cage the American Liam Neeson? A paradox. It's a paradox, everybody. What's going on? The Jinja Ninja? Welcome. Pat S here says, like the happy ending in Looper. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Because people have issues with Looper. People like to pick apart Looper's logic. But one could use the same argument. Oh, it's a popcorn film. Just sit back and consume. Sit back and enjoy. It's just, to me, to hear people who are critical, as I myself have been critical, right, of anyone who says, just shut up and consume. Just consume. The fact that we are essentially being told the same thing. Oh, it's a popcorn film. Just enjoy it. That's no different than saying, just consume it. It's not woke. Just consume it. No. We got to have higher standards than that. We need to have movies that are not woke and also are good with good stories that at least work. It makes sense. Crazy pills. All right, heading back over to Odyssey. Laura here says, everyone lived. Great. Awesome. Glad to hear that. Then says, we use CBD chews for our dogs. Oh, does that work? We unfortunately didn't think ahead. And typically we actually use, it actually can be pretty effective. You can give your dogs, oh my goodness, I'm blanking out on the name of it, but it is allergy pills. Benadryl. You can actually give, that's what I was looking for, Benadryl, because it makes dogs drowsy just like it can make humans drowsy too. And it typically can also help them in those cases. And yeah, River typically does not get very anxious about a lot of things, but something tells me that we might even look into, I might have to look into those CBD chews though, because that could be something where, again, short term, a lot cheaper probably too, but maybe even to looking into getting her like some kind of anxiety meds. Because it's, again, only really a couple times in the year, New Year's and July 4th, where they typically have a lot of fireworks that cause her to really be uncomfortable. Let's see. Battle Puggle, welcome to the channel over there. Laura then says, Pacific Rim had a bunch of woke garbage, but I ignored it and enjoyed the movie. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really pick up on a lot of the woke stuff in Pacific Rim, but again, I've only really seen it once a long time ago. So maybe there's stuff that I even missed. But no, yeah, I think that, and again, you can do anything you want personally. If you want to sit back and enjoy a movie and you know that there's issues with it, hey, more power to you, right? I'm not going to gatekeep you on that. The only issue that comes into play for me is when you try and make the point of it being an objectively good movie. That's when I have some issues. That's when I have some issues. Lee the Lightning comes in to say, Planet of the Apes movies might be the best example of doing time travel without making everything messy. Yeah, I think there's definitely a fair point to be made there for sure. Then talking about Lee the Lightning, talking about, yeah, most MCU films for sure. Let's see. 8-Bit Axel says, Hail Allfather. So Dan only died in the first timeline because he failed in his first jump and became depressed. Trying to think about that. Dan only died in the first timeline because he failed in his first jump and became depressed. I don't actually get that, 8-Bit Axel. Because no, when he gets jumped, right, there's an issue that happens in it, but he's still in the future. I don't quite understand. I need a little more context there. Just another red shirt says, Hail to Lethal Lightning. Bifford a Hobbit says, Brie Larson voice, Tomorrow's War in Cruella wasn't made for you. Wasn't made for you. Patass says, best popcorn film, real genius. The popcorn at the end of the film was amazing. Nice. Well, I mean, think about what was originally known. Typically when film historians talk about popcorn films, summer blockbusters, normally Jaws is talked about as one of the first to kind of fit that category in certain capacities, in certain ways, with the way it was released, marketed, that kind of thing. That's a popcorn film. That's also a very well done movie as well. Now, you can get into the logic of, well, real sharks wouldn't do this necessarily, but again, they set up a very specific universe about one specific shark. Now, obviously, the future Jaws films, those you could definitely say, okay, these are just that. Now it's just getting stupid. Wait, the prodigy of this shark is getting revenge. Okay, that obviously you get a little bit more, but there's just enough in that movie where it is one of those movies that you can sit back and enjoy, even though, if you think about it even for a second about the logic behind a shark doing that, you're like, well, sharks wouldn't really do that. But what do people mostly think about sharks? Mostly people think about Jaws. So it's interesting how Jaws actually did a lot, because for me, I'm still terrified of open water. Even though if you actually look at statistics, it's very unlikely for anyone really to get attacked by a shark. So even though the logic is not even in that story and in that movie, it presents it in a way where the fear is there, the terror is there. There's a lot of, again, really well done other story elements that exist there too. And again, it works within its own universe. And though that's where you can suspend your disbelief, right? That's where you can kind of have those moments. But when you have a story where the story itself just falls apart and then it tries so hard to make it sound like it's smart and make it sound like it's well construed to the point where they extend it to 2 hours and 15 minutes, that's where I have an issue. That's why I wouldn't say that this really falls into the same category. Brightburn says, I just saw an old Collider video clip where they said Casablanca is overrated. Do you agree or disagree with that? Oh, completely disagree with that. Completely disagree. Casablanca is one of the greatest films ever made. And why is that? Because the story is phenomenal. The story is fantastic. The dialogue is great. The character development is fantastic. And now, obviously, if you look to the tech they had back then, you can obviously say, like, for instance, I can be critical of that movie because I can say, man, that driving sequence is so cringe because you have a happy Humphrey Bogart there with the screen changing behind him. It doesn't make any sense and didn't need to be in the movie. But then you realize, but yeah, that's okay because everything else that's a lot more important, like the rest of the story, is good. JKD Buck, we don't have to make The Last Jedi good. It's a popcorn film. And if you didn't like it, you're an istophobe. Exactly. It's using very, very similar logic. Very similar logic. See, Pat S. says, nice history of the 80s for 600. Lethal came in to say, one moment Tolkien is called a Otzi, the next he is super woke. So basically he's the gayest progressive Nazi of all time. Exactly, Lethal, exactly. That's the logic that these people are using, right? As first we have to cancel Tolkien because orcs, and clearly he was going after African-American people for some reason. How he does that, I don't know. And now all of a sudden, oh, if you really dive into the work, though, he's actually super woke. Before woke was even a thing. Before woke was even invented. Which, of course, they will never want to admit to themselves. But Lolly at River, what's going on, says, the guns really confused me. I would like to believe humans made some progress with their tech. The people are also just wore their normal clothes. Yeah. They try and make a point about the clothing. Like, oh, we just don't have time. We don't have the time to manufacture, a suited armor or anything like that. And again, it's one of those things where if they didn't have all the other issues that they had, I would be forgiving. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right there about the guns and the tech. And as I said, if they really wanted to dive into this story and make it a lot better, they could have done some storyline about bringing back one of the creatures as, I guess, proof. And then if they have one of the creatures, they can then do research and then figure out, oh, what weapons can we have that we haven't used before that might be more effective, that then the past would be ready for those future events. Also, and this is where you start to dive into, again, this to me, I think, is when you start to overthink it. The fact that they went back in time and they gave them this tech and this knowledge means that they would never have been in the position to create the wormhole or the need to create the wormhole, which allowed people to be sent back in time, which means these people were never sent back in time, which means at that point you create this kind of paradoxical situation. I think personally that's when you start to overthink it a bit, but that's why I focus more so on the surface level issues with the story, because even that you're like, oh, wait a minute, yeah, that also doesn't make any sense. JD Buck, Odin, I heard, let's go back in the past and make better weapons so we can win this time, is the plot of Indiana Jones 5 and the Raiders of the Lost AARP. Oh boy. Oh boy. If that ends up being true, let's just say it's not going to be good. Alex McCarthy says, Tomorrow War was a better Alien movie than Alien Covenant. I don't think any of them were very good, but it is what it is. All right, let's head over to Odyssey. Laura says, Benadryl works, but can make your dog super thirsty. Oh, okay. Thank you for that information. Yeah, I'll have to, again, look out and look into those CBD chews. All right, I can go for about another 8 minutes or so. Let's see. JKD76, who is a member, says Catherine Zeta-Jones is Welsh. So is Christian Bale. Who else in Hollywood is Welsh? I don't know. This is an interesting point. I don't think I ever made the connection that Christian Bale was Welsh. That is a fascinating thing. Fascinating thing. Anthony Hopkins for the win. Alice McCarthy. Jaws 3 is a cinematic masterpiece. Kidding, but love the movie, though. And again, if you like it because it's stupid and campy, okay, fine. As long as you admit that it's stupid and campy. Interesting. Did not know that the original Darth Vader was Welsh. Thank you, Lethal. Absolutely. Casablanca is timeless. Absolutely. You must remember this. A kiss is just a kiss. For sure. A sigh is just a sigh. Man Squatch tagging to say, how do we break it to him that is J.R.R. Tolkien, not J.R.R. Tolkien? Did I mispronounce it? If I did, I apologize. Sometimes I have marble mouth. The time travel in Casablanca didn't work, said every cool, bald YouTuber critic I'm watching right now. Badass. Oh, if only time travel worked. Oh, man. Thank the Lord there's no time travel in Casablanca. There's the only time travel that should really ever be used in a lot of films today, unless you're going to do it right, which is flashbacks, which is not really time travel at all. Jam Cruz. Casablanca is overrated, comes a quote from the journos. Quite frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn, says Odin. One of the best films ever made. Seriously. One of the all-time best. Mansquatch says, simple solution to the time travel paradox. The time bridge goes to a parallel past. So they're basically drafting people who will have no impact on their own future, Dragon Ball Z style. That's the issue, though, is that they don't establish that it's a parallel past. Or I guess it depends on what you mean by that. So basically, the logic that the movie tries to use is to say, we need to send you to the future so that we can win the war in the future. And we're going to only send people who are already going to die before the war starts, so therefore it won't have an impact. But as I mentioned, that is impossible from a logical standpoint, because if you're sending thousands and thousands of people back to the future, which is a much better movie, but if you're sending them to the future, you're going to be changing the future events, because those are people that have friends, family, interactions. It doesn't matter if they die before the war, and that's the logic you're going to use. And as I mentioned previously, the interaction between Chris Pratt and his daughter in the future and her explaining what happens to him would have already changed it. Now, if they were going to do a multiverse logic, if they were going to say, by going back, we have now created an alternate timeline or an alternate universe, and the actions that you do here are not going to have an impact on our future, then they would at the very least have that. But they didn't. Again, they try to be smarter than what they actually were. Lee the Lightning here says, Mad Max Fury Road did more damage to the Mad Max franchise than The Last Jedi did the Star Wars. Ooh, I disagree. How did Mad Max Fury Road damage the Mad Max franchise? I mean, I understand the criticism that it's not even really a Mad Max movie, because it's not. It's more of a Furiosa movie, and now we're getting a Furiosa solo movie, which kind of boggles my mind, because we already got that, really, with Mad Max Fury Road. But The Last Jedi destroys any potential that the sequel trilogy had, which, again, obviously in retrospect is not as much as a lot of people thought, myself included at the time. But then also it breaks all previous Star Wars movies as well. Mad Max Fury Road doesn't break any of the previous movies. You can still watch the previous films, and there's nothing in the plot of Fury Road that has any real impact on the older films and on the older stories. So I don't know if that was just a random throwaway comment, but I don't think that's true at all. Anyway, JKD Buck says, Odin, you are generous with your time. Thanks for the stream. JKD Buck, thank you, man, for supporting the stream. Yeah, I just got a few more minutes over here, so if y'all could slow down those comments. Alice McCarthy says, Ryan Cannell needs some of those CBD chews for Mario Kart. Yeah, seriously. Brightburn says, I hear the biggest complaint about Ridley Scott's Alien is it's much slower than James Cameron's Aliens, but do you think they work good as a double feature? I think they work as a double feature, yeah, absolutely, because they are so different. Because you do get different... I prefer Aliens because I prefer the action genre, right? That's a subjective position for me, because I just enjoy that genre a lot more than the horror genre, which is much more appropriate for the Alien film. But I think both are great. I think both are great. I think they both work very well together, too. Callum Cannon says, the MCU isn't supposed to make a lot of sense. Lord of the Rings isn't meant to align with historical values. Star Wars isn't supposed to follow a story. Tomorrow War's support is the same. Yeah, exactly. Callum Cannon, this comment right here, exactly. The same logic that is used by a lot of people to go and criticize people who are within the MCU and Lord of the Rings, attacking Lord of the Rings, is the same logic that a lot of people are now using to defend the Tomorrow War. We got to be very careful with that, and we got to be as consistent as we can be. We're all going to make mistakes now and then, but we have to try and be as consistent as we possibly can be. Mansquatch then says, I mean like token characters for wokey wokes. Ah, okay. Gotcha. Let's see. Jake Buck. Mad Max 2 Fury Road. The Road Warrior was epic. Just as good as a samurai movie. The ending is haunting. Road Warrior is fantastic. I don't like the first Mad Max movie. The first Mad Max movie to me was just a mess. But Road Warrior, awesome. Beyond Thunderdome, lots of fun. Jakey Buck. Mad Max wasn't the main character in his own movie. Furiosa was. Exactly. As I just said. How does it destroy it, though? It doesn't... Again, how does it destroy the Mad Max property? It doesn't spend enough time on the Mad Max character because it's really not a Mad Max movie in the first place to really destroy his character at all. Again, what we're talking here about is... Again, now I'm getting lost. The Last Jedi not only destroys the set of movies it's a part of, it also destroys all past movies. Fury Road does not have that same long impact. In fact, I'm going to be honest. I actually very much enjoy Fury Road because I think the effects are awesome and badass. My issue with it is that it really should not be called Mad Max because it's not a Mad Max. It's not really a Mad Max movie. Let's see here. The Last Jedi prevented me from watching the roids of Soy Walker. I'd watch the next Mad Max movie. Exactly. Me too. Let's see here. Lord of the Rings 1. So, that name. Lord of the Rings 1, Eagles were not cool. It's like 15 jets and Mordor is the place. What? Very confused by that. How is his character completely destroyed, though? It does not destroy the enjoyment of the previous films. That's what Last Jedi does. Mad Max Fury Road does not do that. Let's see what Lethal has to say. The world makes no sense in that universe. What's wrong? Bullet Farm. I'm trying to remember the Bullet Farm. It's been a while since I've seen it. Isn't that just a place where they're making bullets, though? I don't see any problem with them creating bullets. Let's see here. Lethal says, fire coming out of truck exhaust. Did they forget what caused the end of the world? I don't see how that ruins any previous Mad Max movies, though. What do you mean he can't drive? Most of the movie, he's not even driving. And then when he is driving, I don't see... What? Also, I don't ever see when he can't shoot. Again, I might need just to rewatch it to try and look out for those things. He flips his car at the start. Yeah. Okay. But how does that destroy his character at all? That's what I'm not getting. Okay. I don't know. Lethal, I think those sound more like nitpicks to me. I feel like, yeah. And now, this is coming from someone who's not a hardcore Mad Max fan either. I've seen the movies, and I've enjoyed them, but I need to rewatch the 3 movies. I need to rewatch the 4 movies, I think. I will need to rewatch the 4 movies, because I did like, and my memory is still very positive of Fury Road, because I, again, really like the visuals of the movie. I think the visuals are phenomenal. I love the practical effects. And I think That is for sure a bias that I have. When films use practical effects over visual effects, like over CGI, those are always going to be films that I have a little bit more respect for. And the fact that the vast majority of the shots in Fury Road are done using practical effects and stunts and are made by a dude who is so old that he has no right to make a movie like that anymore is pretty amazing. I don't know. I have a positive view. I'm not sure where Mad Max was less confusing than the unraveling society it depicted. Lilo that says, our whole country walked out in huge rage. The Hollywood ruined our best thing. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that might be on... So as I just admitted, like with my own bias towards practical effects, I think that this might be a position where you have more so of a bias because of this national attention and national dedication to the story and to the movie. Anyway. Let's see. In Fury Road, his interceptor is on its last legs. You can hear it, and it gets destroyed. In Fury Road, he really is mad, a.k.a. insane. Yeah, I think that one could definitely argue that the presentation of Mad Max in Fury Road is not consistent with previous versions, and I think that's a fair criticism. I think that's an objectively fair criticism. Yeah, but I think that the other things are just, I don't know. I feel like that might be more so where those, personal biases get involved as such. But anyway, that is going to be it for me today, everybody. I need to go check and see how Baby Thor is doing, and also spend some time, obviously, on this beautiful day off with Freya as well. But yeah, I think to try and say that Mad Max Fury Road is worse than The Last Jedi, I think that's a bit too far. I think that's way too far. Because The Last Jedi is very much a canon breaker. I don't think Fury Road has that same capacity and that same ability. That's just me personally. And Callum, I actually do agree. I think that from an objective standard, I think, Rise of Skywalker is absolutely worse than The Last Jedi. But I think Last Jedi is more damaging to Star Wars than The Rise of Skywalker, if that makes any sense there. And no, Lethal, no, dude, no. Last Jedi is a masterpiece, he says, compared to Fury Road. No, not at all. Fury Road is a film that I can go back and rewatch. I think a lot of people can go back and rewatch and have fun with, and not even have a second thought about. The Last Jedi has... You cannot tell me that The Last Jedi had less impact on the Star Wars universe than Mad Max Fury Road had on the Mad Max universe. I don't see that. Actual impact. Like looking at actual numbers. Remember that The Last Jedi and the Star Wars universe, by the end of its run, it had lost half its audience. It had lost like $1 billion in revenue. Whereas with Mad Max Fury Road very well received by not just critics, but audiences liked it too. Lots of people like that movie so much that they are making a Furiosa spinoff. And I'm telling you right now that Furiosa spinoff is probably going to be pretty successful too, if they make it a good movie. That's obviously a big if. Now, if it's the same people behind Fury Road, I think that would, if it's a similar styling of that and a similar presentation, I think it'll be successful. Whereas you cannot, again, I think this is more personal for you. You say I would rather watch a Star Wars movie than Fury Road. Again, Lethal, I think this is a good example of subjective versus objective. Last Jedi objectively had more fatal flaws to the Star Wars universe than Mad Max Fury Road did. I think that's an objective fact. Subjectively, you think one is worse than the other, and I think that is completely fine. That's your opinion, dude. That's totally fine. But you cannot say that Last Jedi had less impact on Star Wars than Fury Road had on Mad Max. Fury Road made Mad Max more popular, if anything. Last Jedi made Star Wars a lot less popular. And you can see that based on very clear metrics. No. Lethal. I'm looking at box office numbers. I'm looking at hype. You cannot say that there is more hype for the upcoming Star Wars movies than there are for the upcoming Mad Max movie. Now, again, we're dealing with very different audiences because the Mad Max audience is a lot smaller than the Star Wars audience. So that has to already be baked in the cake. But here's the thing. Mad Max Fury Road grew the audience. And that's clear based on money. That's clear based on ratings. Last Jedi shrunk the audience, and that is also based on money and also based on audience ratings too. So no. Lethal, no. There's a reason why audience score for Last Jedi to this day is still not good, and why Fury Road's audience score is still good on almost any site you go to based on any metric. I think, dude, Lethal, I'm telling you this, man, I think you feel this way because you have a personal attachment to the Mad Max franchise, and so this has a much more personal impact on your view than the Star Wars does. But based on just money and pure objective metrics, it can't work. Anyway, I could go all day with this, man. I could go all day with this. But in this case, dude, I'm sorry. You're wrong. You're wrong, man. I'm sorry. You're wrong. I love you, bro. You're my brother. Please subscribe to Lethal Lightning, by the way, because obviously I still love him. Subscribe to him. But I'm sorry, dude. Based on actual metrics you can actually follow, you can't. You just can't do it. So anyway, again, I think that your personal feelings are clouding your judgment. Your feelings, they lead you astray. All right. Thank you all so much for being here today. I really do appreciate the love and support. Again, thank you to the Odyssey fam for y'all hanging out. I really do appreciate it. Two of you over on Odyssey says, Fury Road does not add or subtract anything from the Mad Max movies, doesn't destroy anything in them. Exactly. It does not destroy anything in them. And also, as I said, there are objective elements and standards that we can look to. The fact is, Fury Road grew the audience, and a lot of people, and I would argue most people, whether they're fans, original fans of the franchise or not, enjoyed the movie for what it was, even if they had issues. Whereas I don't think you can say the same thing about The Last Jedi and the current Star Wars state. Just saying. Anyway, you guys are all awesome. Again, thank you so very much for your love and your support today. I do want to, of course, shout out my YouTube members, as one of the perks of being a YouTube member at the Army of Asgard level and above is that you get shouted out at the end of every live stream. So let me go ahead and try and pull those up. That way I know who it is I need to shout out as such. Current level. And yeah, there's a lot of fun. For streaming tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern time, we'll have our one-man low council. So we should have a lot of fun with that. And then on Wednesday, we'll have another Good Morning Asgard podcast. And seeing how things go with Baby Thor and daycare, we might be able to go this long again. Typically, it's only an hour, but we were able to go for a normal stream length today because wife is off. And so I'll go take up for her in the end, though. So anyway, shout out to Grimm's Math, Goblin Squatch, whose channel was deleted for some reason, but still going to shout you out, good sir, because it still has you listed as a member. Riff Magos, Wicked Plumber, Sean McD, Gomer Kyle 79, Your Muslim Uncle, Kara Tharp, Eric Jewett, Rich the Savior, Dadman Walking 55, M Tax Shark, Forever Sci-Fi, Rosie G12, Andrew Hoyle, Eric K, Orange at Reviews, Adam Avery, Jay Stowe, and Aiden Vickery. Thank you all very much for being here today. This was a lot of fun. Andrew Hoyle says, guest, please. Yeah, I was thinking about trying to do that earlier on in the summer, and I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Typically, a lot of people are not awake at this time of day, and also, as you know, I keep the channel very clean, and there's a lot of people that I love who I don't know if they'd be able to keep it clean on the channel. Punk Waddle, yep, the show is wrapping up, dude. But anyway, shout out to everyone watching. Light up that fire button on Odyssey. Also, smash that like button if you're watching over on YouTube. I have no idea how many people have been watching. No idea what the like to dislike ratio has been. But anyway, thank you all so very much for being here. And also, please share this information with people. Lethal, yes, I'm not talking about you only, but you're definitely someone in mind. Because I love you. But I don't know. And also, too, here's the other thing. I wouldn't want anyone on who couldn't be themselves. And so I wouldn't want to handicap someone not being able to be themselves in that way. But anyway, it's not just you. It's definitely not just up you. Callum, thank you. 80 upvotes, 4 downvotes. And again, if you're one of the 4 downvotes because you don't like what I have to say about the Tomorrow War, which is what the vast majority of the show is about, I'm sorry if you don't like objective reality. You can subjectively enjoy this movie all you want. I have no issue with that. I'm not trying to take away your joy of the movie. But I am going to be critical of anyone who's going to use logic that they criticize to defend a movie that objectively has flaws. And hopefully I was able to make that clear going into the different points of the film as such. But anyway, if you didn't like that, I'm sorry. But it is what it is. Anyway, you guys are all amazing, beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. See you all tomorrow evening for the One Man Low Council. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my July Patreon and Subscribe Star members. Andrew Hoyle, Biffer de Hobbit, Brian P., Dion, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toone, Jonathan Carney, Laura, the Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina B, and Tina Bojan. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on Patreon, and also to my Subscribe Star members, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, John B, Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man. Thank you all very much for being here today. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every single live stream and video on the channel, please make sure to check out the links in the description of ways that you can support me over on Patreon and Subscribe Star as well. It gives you access to things like giveaways of Blu-rays, 4Ks, and digital codes. Also, access to a podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where we have a lot of fun. We also answer Q&A questions as well. And also you might get access to the Chosen of Valhalla level, which gives you access to a once-a-month podcast exclusively where I bring on you to the main channel with everyone else who is at the level, and we all just talk about movies, pop culture, and tons of fun stuff like that. And also, of course, Tina, who is the Empress of the Universe, is going to give us tons of reviews of movies and also maybe a couple of awesome rants here and there as well. So if that sounds fun to you, make sure you go ahead and check out those links. Again, you're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.